How do we proceed today? The agenda is as follows. We're going to look at the case video shortly. And in that case video, we're going to be asking the question, what is wrong with the duck? What's wrong with the duck? If you look at the opening slide, you would have seen the duck leading, his duck had ducklings. And that tells us that, the mother duck is a leader. But what's wrong with the duck? We see something here, an experience that the duck had as a leader. And the question is, what did she do wrong? Is the duck to blame? And then we're going to look at how you lose your right and your privilege to lead. Take note of that distinction. There is the right to lead. There is also the privilege to lead. They are not the same thing. And a leader must understand both of them. But we will see something that happened with the dog in that video. And it gives us a basis to address this issue of the privilege and the right to lead. Then we would have the opportunity of asking ourselves, what kind of mistakes? Have we made similar mistakes before? Or are we in fact finding ourselves in a similar situation? In the last class, there were people who actually owned up to the fact that they were experiencing something similar to what they saw with the duck. Then we look at the duck style of leadership. Are there any benefits? Are there any dangers? Then we look at the style of the duck and your style. Is your style anything like that of the duck? Because if it is, then you know what you may be setting yourself up for. If it's not, thank God for you, but you still learn what you must be mindful of so that you don't have the kind of experience that the dog has. Where do you lead from? We would examine that. Do you lead from the back? You lead from the front? You lead from the core? What does it mean to lead from the core? Then there are three concepts that I would also be drawing our attention to: nobility, naivety, and nonchalance on the part of leadership. Nobility, naivety, and nonchalance. Then what are the consequences of leadership failure? When you fail as a leader, what consequences should you expect? How do you mitigate failure? We focus on the subject of cohesion of the leaders team. And I'm sure there are people here who would benefit a great deal from that. I know people on the platform right now, who are leading teams, and that is an area that they'll need to really pay attention. Then, of course, how to become a leader that people will gladly follow. Before we examine the summary and the lessons. That's how we're going to proceed. We're going to break from time to time. We will have 2 breaks at least over the course of the next 3 hours. So that's it. All right, so there you have the ducklings. And we're asking the question, what's their fate? What's their fate? There is no leader there, or so it would appear. Or so it would appear. You may be tempted to think there is no leader because they are all of the same size. But you may also look at that picture and say, okay, but one is standing, on an elevated patch and standing separately. Perhaps that is the leader among them. Let me say that the mother duck is not in their midst. So all those that are standing together, they are colleagues, as it were. But that doesn't suggest that there is no leader, at the same time. It doesn't suggest that there is no leader. There's a leader, there may be a leader, and it may be the one who is standing up there, and that leader may not be formally recognized, but maybe informally recognized, in which case you see happens to be one to whom all the others look up to. Yes, he's their colleague, but he appears to muster some influence. Okay, to have gone to stand up in that point is seemingly either showing off or projecting himself. It ought to tell you something. So let me start by registering with you that when you do have a group, don't think that you are the only leader because you are formally designated as the one to whom they have responsibility. Among the group, among those who report to you, there can be people, and they're usually people who command influence. They're usually people, who are listened to, whose voice tend to carry some weight, with their colleagues. That's what that picture should be drawing your attention to. And please pay attention to that point, because we would watch a video soon, and you would see in that video that is it possible that there is somebody like, that influencer there who happens at his level among his colleagues to also be a leader, So when you look at the first picture that we saw, the mother duck, you will like to ask yourself, is the mother duck the only leader in that group? Is she the only one that everybody is following? Are you the only leader in your group? Are you the one that everybody is following? You may have the expectation that people should follow you. Those who report to you should follow you. But are you aware that there may be somebody else within the group, among them, that they are following? And is it possible that while you appear to be the leader, the true leader is one of their own? Okay. Now, if there is ever a situation like that, that would be an irony. That would be a shame. That's the beginning of leadership failure, when the leader isn't the one predominantly in charge. It isn't that there won't always be people in the group who would be influencers, but it is that their voice it must not trump that of the leader. It is that team members must not look to them for their development. They must look to the leader. One of the things that we need to get very clear, we often miss it. Leaders often miss it. All right, they think they are leading, but they don't understand that the dynamics of the team is such that the real leader may not be there. They may not be the real leader. One of their own may be the real leader. And that's a disaster, because one of their own can be an effective leader. All of them are presumably, looking up to you, or meant to be looking up to you to evolve into true leaders. So how can they be looking at one of their own as the leader? That means they are not going anywhere. That means they are not going to develop. Okay, they're not going to develop. One of the things I like to register here also, that I say always, is that even if you have been appointed to a position that gives you authority over a team, forget about whether or not you have what it takes. That singular gesture should be taken to signal to you that those whom you have been given responsibility over have something to learn from you. It doesn't matter what the situation is. It doesn't mean leadership and the position of leadership does not mean you are the best. No, it doesn't mean that you know everything. It doesn't mean that you know specific things more than the members of your team. But one thing that it means is that you have what everyone under you needs to move to the next level, to be transformed, to be ready for leadership assignment. Okay. And if more of us will come to those positions with that conviction, I think that we will do the job of leadership better. Okay. Because we don't need any endorsement. If we don't believe in ourselves, how will people believe in you? And if people don't believe in you, truth is they would not follow you. So let's look at what's wrong with the duck. And I'd like, to show you a video here shortly, and I please want each one to pay attention. Please look at that video right now. Okay, please pay attention to that video. We're going to have our discussion immediately the video is done. I'll try and play this video back a couple of times so that it can sink in very well. Please pay attention. You may even make your notes based on what you see. Let me caution also that don't be distracted. Don't allow your view to be influenced by the caption on the video. That's just somebody else's expression. It's not even my view, but that's how somebody, saw the situation right there. That's how somebody saw the situation. So you can see something differently, and I'm hoping you will see a lot differently. So I'm playing the video again. I'll play the video about 3, 4, 5 times, so that it requires you to pay a lot of attention. The video is just 57 seconds, actually. It's 57 seconds. So all of what you saw happened within a minute. Everything that you saw, that you're seeing there, happened within 1 minute. All right. This is, if you like, this is 1 minute leadership. Everything happened in 1 minute. So you see what can happen to a leader in 1 minute. Okay. That just draws our attention to the issue of timing and time frame. Okay. And when you look at the leadership responsibility. All right, so I'm playing it again. This is the third run. Watch the duck, the mother duck leading her ducklings, and they're about passing over a grill. I hope you saw something happen there. And then she comes back, or at least hesitated for a bit, and then comes back and goes over the grill, not by the side this time. And you see what happens again. And there's a gentle guy there who does his own thing. And here you are, the mother duck. I don't know what she's doing at that point. I don't know what she's thinking, going around the grill. What is she going to do next? What action will she take next? All right. So one more time, let's look at it. I'd allow you to do that now without any commentary from me. Okay, so there you are. We'll come back to that if we need to refresh our memory. So what can we learn? What things strike you? What can we learn? What strikes you the most? Remember that this is a leadership class. So we saw the doc leading there. If for no other reason, the doc is the one in front. All right, everybody's coming behind her. The doc appears to be the most developed, at least in stature. Every other person is smaller, and they all appear to be around the same kind of size. So the class is open. What do you think? What did you see? Let's see who wants to start us off. Yes, Manny, go ahead and unmute yourself. Let's hear you, sir.
All right. Good afternoon, sir, and good afternoon. It's afternoon here in Nigeria, so good afternoon to my colleagues. So, as a matter of fact, I have been looking at that video since I saw that video for the first time. I think on one of your social media handles.
Yeah,
I saw it about 2 weeks ago. So maybe I've had the benefit of 2 weeks
of study.
2 weeks of brooding over the situation to try and see what I can pick out. So,
all right.
A few things stood out for me in terms of leadership lessons.
Yes.
The first thing is that I see that the dog was not aware of what I want to call the operating environment, was not aware of the pitfalls of that particular environment. All right, so there's this thing about growing up too fast. Maybe if you have somebody who just becomes an adult suddenly, hasn't gone through the phases of childhood, does not understand the pitfalls. You see, the dog was fully developed. So the manhole or the grill wasn't the problem, wasn't the challenge. But this dog probably hasn't seen that would be a challenge for younger ducklings. Maybe because as a duckling, it didn't pass through such a challenge. So maybe because that mother dog did not pass through such a challenge, wasn't aware that this could be a challenge for a dog that isn't my size, for instance. So I think being aware of the environment is something that, having that environmental intelligence, we focus on emotional intelligence, we focus on IQ and all that, but there's also need for a leader to have this environmental intelligence, to know what this terrain, what are the pitfalls, what are the areas where caution and care must be, where we must treat carefully and all that. So I think that was one of the issues. The second issue also was the response time. Yeah. The mother dog lost one of the ducklings. One had fallen in. And you can see that it took quite a while for her to become aware. I don't even know from the video whether she was even aware that one had fallen in. So the response time tells me that she wasn't in touch with the followers. That's what it ministers to me. She wasn't in touch, right? So it took her, they walked a few paces ahead before she turned back and noticed. I don't even know if she noticed, if the turning back was that she noticed that one was missing. Maybe let's assume that she noticed that one was missing, but the response time was pretty there was some bit of gap. So it shows that there was lack of that constant touch. So it tells me as a leader, I must be in touch with my followers constantly.
Yeah.
So that what happens, something shouldn't happen within my team. And as a leader, I'm getting to know about it, maybe days or weeks or months after it's happened.
Yeah.
So I think there was an issue with response time.
Yeah.
The third thing I noticed was also when she turned back to try and solve the issue. When I watched the video the first time, I didn't see this caption that I saw in today's video, but this caption now got me thinking. How do you recover when you've had a challenge, right? So much as the caption was a bit biased, but it also gave me some perspective. How do you recover from a fall? As a leader, sometimes in recovering from one incident or one issue, the approach to solving that or trying to recover or resolve that issue, will it create other issues? Will it create other problems? Right? So how do we solve one problem without creating other problems? Those are the few leadership lessons I would say I picked up from that video. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before you are done, I like the point that you made. How do you, address a problem without creating other problems?
Yes.
But the problem that arose in her bid to try and solve the first problem, when you compare it in terms of scale, which problem?
A much bigger problem.
All right. So
much more.
So in trying to address one problem, you may end up with a disaster.
Exactly. A crisis. Exactly.
Okay. So all right.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to throw up some issues. But let's hear from others. I'm going to throw up some issues, but you've raised some very, very instructive issues. And I think some people also had the privilege of that video, like your good self before today. Okay, Oluwatoyin, please go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, House.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, what I was able to learn from the video is that as a leader, if you watch the video very well, you can see that the mother dog take a wrong route when she was leaving her babies at the back. She didn't take a proper route to where they are going, and that was what happened. That was what makes one of them fall into the pit. So as a leader, whatever you build on, like if you're taking if you're doing a wrong thing, you're actually training your followers on the wrong way. You're teaching them the wrong thing that they are supposed to be doing, like the wrong route, and the followers, the babies follow her, and it leads to that falling into the pit. So as a leader, if you don't have a good foundation, so there is a possibility that you're going to lose all your followers. And secondly, as a leader, you don't use the same solution to solve a particular problem. When I think she was aware of one of them falling into the pit, that was why she made a U-turn. And turning back, she still falls because she took the wrong place she took before, and that makes her to lose all the babies. So as a leader, if you use the same solution to solve all the problems, the possibility that both the leader and the followers are not going to anywhere. Am I communicating?
Yes, well, I'm listening to you. Yeah, I believe we're hearing you.
Okay. So and thirdly, I would like to say, as a leader, it's also good to, to allow your followers, because sometimes you might think you are actually leading them right, whereas among the followers, you might have people that knows more than what you know. Just like you said before we started the program, sir. So
Yeah.
as a leader, you have to ask your followers, okay, this is the route, this is the thing we're about to do. Okay, I need your suggestion on how to carry this assignment. So if you think you are the one that knows it all, so there's a possibility you're gonna ruin everything and there won't be any good result.
All right. So that, are you done? So that you don't, the leader
Yes, sir.
doesn't know it all. The leader needs to be careful if you take your people through the wrong route.
Yes, it's sensitive, yes.
You know, it's going to be problematic, and then don't use a one solution approach or the same approach to address every kind of problem. Because that can have its own issues. All right, I thought I saw Bibi's hand. That hand appears to have gone away. Okay, let's have more contributions from the house, please. More contributions. Kinde, are you there? You want to speak to us? All right.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
This is Kinde.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I quite agree with most of the comments that have been made, but one striking observation I made with the last duckling,
yes,
the last man standing, so to speak.
Yes.
He kind of, the duckling observed that the other ducklings were not there, but he looked around and he made, what do I call it now? He knowingly jumped into that.
So his own was not a mistake.
It wasn't a mistake.
It was deliberate.
Which proves to me that that leader is not their true leader. They probably had a leader whom our leader has fallen into this, and the other team member, let me do likewise. So he followed suit. So from my observation, the, so to speak, lead is not the leader. Their leader probably fell into the pit and he decided to follow. That's one striking, the last bit I got from there, aside the other ones. So let me not bore you, but I think that's one point I needed to make out. Thank you, sir.
Oh, okay. Before you go, I like the point that you are drawing attention to. So everybody else, all the other ducklings fell in inadvertently. But there's a last one who virtually jumped in. And we can observe that again. That one happily jumped
deliberately,
in, oblivious of the fact that this is danger, this is disaster, gladly jumped in. But I want you to pay, and you made a point which I think we all need to bear in mind. The fact that it would appear, I don't know whether there is another leader yet, but it would appear that that last one had a motivation. You see that the person had a motivation. Why did this person jump in so gladly, not oblivious of the fact that, hey, something is going on here? But did you take a moment to observe that what she did before she jumped? All right, there is something that she did before she jumped. I'm going to play it again. That last one didn't just jump. There was a moment of, you understand?
Excitement.
Yeah, not the, yes, the excitement came after something. Please watch carefully. The excitement came after that last one wasn't so excited. It wasn't immediately. She didn't jump in. You can see. So she looked, do you understand? A bit of a decision moment before she jumped in. And she was looking at the leader.
Yes.
And wondering, what are you going to say? All right. What do I do? It would appear that she didn't get the kind of, signal that will warn her that don't jump. Okay. The doc, I mean, when you look at that exchange, I don't know how it strikes you. Okay, I want to draw attention to it, and I want us to speak about it. Okay, so we'll take Bibi and then we'll take Bernadette. All right, Bibi, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, House. The first thing that I saw in that particular thing was the first sentence that you mentioned, that whether you think you are competent as a leader or not, the people that you are needs what you have. You can actually take care of them. The first time when she was going, first of all, the terrain looked very snowy. So it's not normally their good environments, I think. Yeah. Even the dog, the lead dog, was a bit hesitant. She looked and she was hesitating. She scoped the environment. So that meant that this is not their normal environment, okay? And so therefore, I would have thought that the leader would now be extra cautious, not staying at the front and not having a 360-degree view of the team, okay? So when they were going the first time, she actually stumbled. She stumbled over the edge.
Yeah.
And if she's a lead dog and she stumbled, if she's a very good lead, immediately she should know that if she did stumble, the challenge will be there for the team. And it would have been a very good time to quickly, you understand, check or pause or warn them. Then when the other one, the one that fell off into the ridge, it was not the last member of the team. It was so still within the team. And nobody drew attention to, hey, something has happened, okay? And they were all going, which speaks to the fact that they are just not a cohesive kind of a team. By the time she turned back, she remembered that she's actually stumbled. So I found it very ridiculous that at the edge of the thing, she stumbled and she still made a decision to go right through the ridge. And at that point in time again, the only danger, I remember when we want to do a driving test in UK, they always ask us to check the danger. What are the very dangerous things? In that environment, if she's been very sensitive, the only avenue or any time that she could have lost one of them, because I believe she's now aware that she's lost and had a sneaky feeling, carrying the whole environment, she couldn't see it in view. The only normal place that danger could have been, especially when she stumbled, will be on that. Why will a leader now take a team again through the very now more precarious situation of taking them in between? And of course, she did exactly what she did the first time. She didn't look back. There was a book I read or a slang that talks about leadership that have followers behind their back is really not a good leader. If you're a good leader, your followers should be on the same breast at you. So at least you have a view of all of them. I don't know where I saw it. And I felt that should have been a decision made the next time when she was even coming back. Even if she was going to be looking at them, she should position her team in such a way that she has an access to what's going on. And then eventually, when she went about, and the other young lady, the last little one who was expecting to be led by virtue of information, didn't get information. I think that particular one is probably the unconscious leader or something like that. And I have a sneaky feeling that because the boss leader, as it were, or the lead dog did not say anything, I think she was, or either is a she, is on a rescue mission for the rest of the team, simply because she thought of it very well. It's not exactly easy for her to jump into that hole. So that's why she has to get her wing in such conformation So within split second, she has thought about everything she was going to do. There was a purpose to her going in there. It wasn't because, but the boss, the lead dog was not giving any information. I think she by herself decided to go and rescue the rest of the team, or at least go and look for them, because she's not getting the leader to actually say something. So those are the things that I saw.
Sorry, let me take you up on the last. I mean, because that seems to me, I'm trying to come to terms with any suggestion that duckling, you know, could he ever imagine that he could save the others? Mm-hmm. Is it possible that we're dealing with a bandwagon effect? Mm-hmm. I mean, look, all of us started out, there were at least like 12 of us. Suddenly I'm the one left alone. Everybody has jumped in. And perhaps I'm hearing their voices from somewhere down there. Hello, I mean, is it about saving them? I'm not even sure that there is a disaster. You and I know it's a disaster, observing from where we stand now. And I want you to take that into consideration. Where we stand now is a vantage point, and I'm going to come and speak to that shortly. So you and I know that is a disaster. That duck, you know, is not standing, is not seeing things from our perspective. The experience is different. Okay, so it's not so much, and we can think of it also in our own situations. When everybody else does wrong, all right, among our team, and we as the leader appear to be the only one who is not following suit, there are one or two whose minds are not made up, you know, whether to follow their colleagues, but ultimately they end up deciding in favor of their colleagues. Why do they do that? Why? It's not because they want to be, you know, with their colleagues. It's not even because they are sure that their colleagues are doing the right things. All right, but there is what you call the bandwagon effect. There is what you call the peer influence. Okay, and there is, as somebody has said earlier on, the possibility that the leader among the group is already down there and they're hearing his voice. Okay, so the last one happily jumps in. And to happily associate yourself doesn't suggest that, you know that there is trouble there. It doesn't suggest that, it suggests that perhaps among the followers, there is greater cohesion than between the leader and the followers. Otherwise, could that explain why the last one jumped in so happily? Mr. Idowu, I want to crave your indulgence to do like a ladies first. So I'm going to come to you, sir, in a moment. Let me recognize Bernadette. Let her speak, and then we'll take your comment. Please go ahead, Bernadette, if you're there. Please speak to us.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So I sort of agree with all of the previous colleagues on the call. Okay. My only exception to the comments is on the fact that the last duck happily jumped in.
Yes.
If you look at the last duck, it did what the mother duck, I believe, should have done. Yeah. It sort of risk assess the situation, if I could borrow Mr. Essien's words.
Okay.
The duckling looked at the situation, looked at the operating environment, as he put it.
Yes.
He risk assessed, looked at the mother duck, and in my view, assumed that mother duck has risk assessed this environment. She has got the ability to mitigate any situation, even though other people had fallen into the thingy already.
Yeah.
in his belief that Mother Duck has done a risk assessment and that has got the mitigating factors available, jumped thinking that he would cross over, because at this point, Mother Duck had crossed over. What he didn't think about was the fact that I've got tiny feet, I can't go through this just like my brothers couldn't.
Yes.
And so for me, it wasn't a case of he was following to join the others in the ditch or going to save them. But then again, I'm sure when we come to actually your comments, we would figure out what the situation was. Again, on the other matter, I don't speak ducks, so I don't know if Mother Duck was actually communicating, but I didn't see any sort of communication between Mother Duck and the followers. There was no point where she turned around to see or say anything to them. Even after it sort of tripped a little bit towards the edge, it still carried on.
Yes.
Because at this point, I'm expecting a leader to stop and say, hey, there's a hazard here.
Yeah.
But Mother Duck still carried on.
Yes.
When Mother Duck decided to turn back around, there was no real communication. She just did a U-turn and expected followers to follow, which they did. And then again, fell into the ditch as the previous one had. But just to say that I agree with all the previous speakers on the other matters.
All right, fantastic. You brought out some very interesting dimensions, and thank you for that. And I like the perspective of the risk, assessment. And so what I hear you say is that, look, that it would appear that your point is that the duckling, the last one that jumped in, got a nod, so to speak, from the mother duck. Maybe it's like, well, since you are not doing anything actively to prevent this, other guys from falling in, maybe the way to go is to join them. Or maybe you expect me actually, to join them, okay? Because again, the mother duck didn't come across as being confused, didn't show any sign of desperation, as you would expect from somebody who, loses virtually everything, okay, save for that one that jumped in, and that's before she jumped in. So that it could well be that, the interpretation that the last dog gave it was that, hey, what are you waiting for? You ought to follow your colleagues, and that from the leader. Is that, does that capture?
No. For me, I think the last stretch of the video is the only part where Mother Duck seems to have communicated with the group. So, well, at this point, the group was just one person.
Yeah.
So at this time, she had actually turned around.
Yeah.
Baby Duck and Mother Duck were looking eye to eye at this point.
Yeah.
Baby Duck then looks at Mother Duck, almost to say, yeah, do it, you can do it.
Yeah, so it's like an endorsement that you should jump.
An endorsement to cross over, because Mother Duck was on the other side at this point.
Oh yeah, okay, I get your point. That
so the
mother duck was expecting that the duckling should just walk across the grill, that you can do it to join her, but instead, I mean, the guy jumped up and in. He wasn't trying to, cross at all.
Because he hadn't given all the other necessary information or guidance to be able to get to where she is.
Okay, all right, great. So that's clearer, but we'll speak to that shortly. Shortly we'll speak to that. Okay, and I like the fact that you brought out the issue of communication. But what do you think? Why we're still at it? What made the mother duck to turn around? Why did she turn around? I mean, after the first, incident, what made her turn around? Is it possible that there is a way they communicate. Why did she turn around? Or did she sense that something may have gone wrong? Or did those coming behind say something to her, or what?
I'm thinking at this point,
And notice that when she came back, she went directly towards the grill. So it would suggest that she knew something had gone wrong. Yeah.
So at this point, my thinking is, so crossing over again, over the grill, quite silly, because like I think it was Kehinde that mentioned earlier, you don't use the same solution for every problem.
Yeah.
Now you've done it once, you failed.
Yeah.
She went back through the same route. Okay, no problem. This time, noticing she had lost all, and there's only one man standing, it was almost like, okay, this is the time to rescue the rest of my troop, be it one person or not. So this is the only time he then applied the principles of communication. Unfortunately, a little too late, and probably not all the variables were applied.
All right. Okay. All right. Great. So we'll come there. Mr. Johnson, please go ahead and have your day. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. I think for me, not a repetition to what everybody has said. I agree with what everybody have identified. But I identified something before.
Okay. Yeah.
Now I see a leader in a comfort zone, an open opportunity, and has been leading a team for a while.
Okay.
Now, moving ahead in that team, he identified from that open field that there's a danger ahead.
Yes.
Now, he's trying to dodge the danger, there is stumble.
Yes.
Now, the question is, at the point he identified, what has he done before he moved ahead?
Yes.
So if he has think, then he will have dodged that stream whereby he take another route.
Okay.
But because he was unable to identify, or let me say identify, and failed to take the next action, then he lost everything.
Yeah.
So I don't want to repeat whatever everyone other person have said, but that's the major thing I identified from the first step of this video.
Do you agree that like the very first, I think it was Oluwatoyin that said it, that do you agree that the doc took the wrong route?
I would say it took the wrong route because, for example, in an organization, a lot of things happen during the process, during that, and you are thinking of what's the best approach to use. And during those assumptions, you are trying to cascade the best approach. There's something that have come that is not in the right direction to your assumptions. So the question is, you must firstly identify if there's something wrong and take the right steps. So to me, that will always be a challenge. That will always be a wrong route in decision making. But the question is, do you identify it early enough to take the right decisions?
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to throw up. So is the doc to blame? Is the doc to blame?
Well, if you permit me, sir.
That question is for the whole class, please.
Okay. Well, if you were to look at it from the perspective of leadership,
yes,
where John Maxwell would say the first law of leadership is the law of the lead. Everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yes.
Then the doc is to blame.
All right.
Because the doc takes responsibility for whatever happens. The leader takes responsibility for what happens to his or her followers or to his team. So okay. I think the doc is to blame.
All right. Any other view? Is the doc to blame? Why would you blame the doc? We have had from that point of view, everything rises and falls. On leadership, is the duck to blame? Why we're at it? Is the duck truly leading? Was that duck leading? The duck was in front, but was the duck leading? Yes, the floor is open. I'd like to have contributions.
Hello, sir. This is Johnson.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the first thing I tried to look at that video when I look at it yesterday is to look at the duck style of leadership.
All right.
So I see it as someone that always go ahead. Someone that's always go ahead of the team. So if that is the style, so to me is it the best style to be adopted in any leadership styles?
Okay, so you want to answer that question? Yeah, I mean, from your perspective, is it the best style?
To me, I think that's not the best style, even though most organizations make it as a style. It's not the best style where you do. You know, it's very, because one of the things I also know in leadership is you must be ahead of your team. One, you must have the capacity to lead your team.
That's leading from the front, Abi?
Yes.
So you said it's not the best, even if it's okay to lead from the front. Where else would you lead from? I saw Bernadette's chart. She said the duck is only ahead of the team. The duck isn't leading the team. And so I still want to have other views. Is the duck leading? And that's a nice way to put it, that the duck is just ahead of the team, but the duck is not leading. But I mean, the duck is the most developed. The duck ought to have responsibility for everybody else. Why do you say she's not leading? Because she didn't communicate, which was the point that you drew our attention to. Why do we say the duck isn't leading? Why is the duck not the leader? Assuming that you agree that she wasn't leading. But someone has said that, you know, the duck was leading from the front. Maybe, you know, the front, the duck is always ahead. The style of the duck is to stay in front. Maybe there's a problem with that. All right. Yes, Olashubomi, please speak.
Hello.
Yes, we're listening.
Okay. I want to actually draw attention to something.
Okay.
We actually feel that the big duck was not communicating.
Yeah.
If you look at that video again,
yeah,
when the last duckling was jumping, the last duckling did not fall in. It actually was like maybe trying to go and meet the big duck.
Yeah.
Because it jumped forward to enter into that thing.
Yeah.
It jumped because I was looking at it again. It jumped forward to enter into the grill.
Yes.
So maybe because initially I was wondering, why will the duck not go after the last one had gone in, was when the duck now went to the side of that duckling.
Yes.
Why didn't it go to that side before?
She was confused.
The duckling,
she was confused now.
Maybe because if the duckling jumped forward, if we can see it again, it looked as if the duckling jumped forward. Yes, it now fell into it. But can you see? It was like the duckling jumped forward. Yes, now fell into it. It was at that point the duck now went round to see. because maybe the duck was standing at the other side, well, in their own language, communicating that it should come over, come to this side, because if it could go around after the duckling went in, then, I mean, there's something. I don't understand why it had to wait for the duckling. So maybe the duck, well, it still boils down to not realizing the potential of, or the ability of the duckling.
Okay,
because
but
if it had seen the
bear in mind, one of the things I'd like the class to bear in mind is that the duck's mental and emotional condition was not constant all through this experience.
Exactly.
The duck, well, when they started out and the duck strayed ahead confidently, all right, when they had fallen in, she discovered that there was something wrong, and she turned around. She hesitated for a moment, looked a bit confused, tried to get herself together. Oh, it appears some of my people have fallen into that grill. That's why that duck headed directly, all right, and walked on the grill. All of that time, the emotional and mental state of the duck had changed. The moment that she discovered that, you know, something had gone wrong. So it's not the same mental state, emotional state that she was in while approaching and passing by that grill that she was in when she came back. It's not the same that she also was in. There was at least 3 or 4 phases of changes in emotion. All right. The first is while she was going, nothing had happened. Everything looked, you know, lovely-dovey. The second was when it turned out she almost got trapped herself when she tripped over the grill. The third was when she discovered something actually had gone wrong, and most likely it was at the grill. At that point, she must have quickly scanned the number of people following her. And by the way, if you looked at it quite closely, there were more than one. There were about 3 that fell in. So it's not easy. I mean, it's not difficult for her to know that, look, my numbers have been depleted. So when she was coming back, she was pretty desperate, all right? Looking at, hey, what could have happened with the grill? So her mental state had been altered. Her emotional state had been altered as well. And she ran over the grill. Whatever she was thinking, that perhaps it could even be that she also would have the opportunity of, you know, falling in or looking through the grill to be able to help, you know, bring them out or something. But in the process, you know, she lost everybody else. And of course, you then imagine that her state changes again after she discovered that she lost everybody else. And here she was alone. Now, so she entered a state of confusion. All right. And the worst emotional state that any mother, notice, this is a mother leader, okay, that any mother would be in, losing all of her children without exception. So you have to also process what you see from the perspective of, you know, the emotional state, the psychological state, the mental state of the leader. And that should draw attention to something, that when you are leading, that's why it's important for you to have presence of mind. That's why it's important for leaders to be on top of their game. Okay? Now, the fact that there is a challenge if you don't manage those dimensions of your person well, it is what leads to the kinds of mistakes, one of which you have pointed out, that you then try to use the same solution to different problems or the same problem on a different scale. Okay, that's part of what happens. The mother dog had become disoriented. That's why she was walking around. I mean, when you look at towards the end, you are bound to feel for this mother dog because she looked rather confused. She didn't know exactly what, you know, she had to do. She seemed at a loss. Somebody said something about the terrain. And while we're at it, I want to draw attention to that. It is true. The terrain is not normal for them. It's not their usual environment. And so it played a role. It played a role. That's not to say it's an excuse. It's just something to note that when the environment is different, all right, you must factor that in how you lead. And a different environment may be even a change of the operating environment. Okay, so take for example, I mean, you're running a business. I understand now, I'm sorry, I'm not, you know, currently in Nigeria, but about a month or two ago, I know I left with the price of diesel at 310 or thereabout. Today, diesel is 600, you know, is approaching 650 naira by my understanding. Now, if your business is heavily dependent on diesel as an input, all right, the way that you have managed that vital input has to change. You can't manage that input in the same way now that the price has doubled. And, you know, when the price of diesel increased from 150 naira to 300 naira, not at a go, but over a space of time. Yes, it is 100%, but the same 100% is when it grows from 300 naira to 600 naira. But your business can't respond in the same way that it responded when it grew from 150 to 300. Why? Because there is the side of those, how you then price your drugs, how you then price your products. The financial capacity of those who are buying is not increasing. And if it is not increasing, you know what the economists will say, it's not as easy passing that increase, 100% increase from 300 to 600 to the buyers. It's certainly not as easy as passing the increase from 150 to 300. Okay, so when the music changes, leaders must understand that the dance steps need to change, however slightly. Bibi, I see your hand. Yeah.
A quick one, sir.
Yes.
Basically, I went through other form of doc kind of videos about duckling or docs and all that kind of leadership.
Yes.
They have a default leadership style. And this particular danger this is not the first time it's happened. Every time a doc and a duckling, if you go through them, you see this situation. So there's a default in leadership, a kind of default leadership that tends to eventually ends up in disaster. As leaders, we must educate ourselves or increase our competency to change our leadership style, especially whether we are aware or not. If we have been chosen as a leader, the onus is on us to stay away, from leadership style that tends to be very leads to disaster. Unfortunately, we've not been able to hear the video of this particular one, but if you go through most of the ducklings, things like that, there was a case whereby there's a nurse. I'm just talking about the last person, the last man standing. I don't think now, in retrospect, that last one was trying to rescue anybody. It was the same thing. It was trying to find a way of escape, thinking that if he or she flies, might be able to avert the disaster if you look at the angle. So like somebody said, he wasn't trying to jump into that. It was a last end resort of another disaster when the mother duck is at attention, maybe confused or whatever. Definitely would have been making noises, you understand, for a rescue thing to be done. If you look at every duck, so there's a standard kind of so we have to learn as leaders and be aware is the onus is on us to understand the kind of leadership style and then improve ourselves to mitigate against a particular one, get into a kind of a situational kind of leadership that will make for a lot of difference. So I really think the last guy, you understand, was trying to come to the mother one and still lost it. So what was the leader doing about at that point? I just wanted to put it that.
All right, we're going to come to examine the duck style of leadership. And there's a reason that I asked, is the duck to blame? All right, because there's something to bring out from it. There's a reason I asked when Mr. Johnson threw up the point about, leading from the front, as it were. That, okay, so what's the problem with leading from the front? Is it such a problem to lead from the front? Is it a good idea? Is it a wrong idea? Let's look at it. Now you say the dog's default style, and I like the use of that, the default style of the dog, approach of the dog is to lead in that manner, to lead from the front. Okay, so the dog typically leads from the front. Is that something the dog is doing wrong? Was that the problem in this instance? But we're going to be examining, if you look at where we started out, one of the things we would look at the dog style of leadership. If we understand the dog, you should be hesitant to answer that question. And I love the perspective from which, Emmanuel brought out, blame the dog. But you should be hesitant to blame until you understood the style of the dog. And indeed, the personality of the dog, because the style of leadership is influenced by the personality of the person. Okay, is influenced by the personality of the person. I always advise that be hesitant to blame somebody unless and until you have had the privilege of walking in the person's shoes, in which case you have been subjected to the kind of environment in which that person found himself or herself. Because some of us, and many, I believe, who apportion blame or see one thing or the other about a particular situation or person, may not be in the best position, all right, to say with certainty that this is what is right or this is what is wrong, because we are not feeling the pinch of the shoes. When you feel the pinch of the shoes, you understand the issues better. It's not also to say that we cannot learn from the experiences of others. It's to say that, we should do a lot to process what we see, to put more information on the table so that we understand, at least as best as we can, what the circumstances, were. And that way, whatever we learn, will really be, will be true learning, will be something that works for us. All right, so I've taken all of that. And I think we should take a break. Let's take a break for like 10 minutes, stretch our legs, grab, a cup of tea or coffee, as the case may be. Let's come back in 10 minutes and take things from that point. If that's fine with your good selves, all right, that's fine with me as well. Let's try and stretch our legs and come back. All right, so let's go on. Thank you very much for the contribution so far. Let's keep it up that way. We have seen a couple of things that we can learn from the doc. We didn't quite spend much time on the pros of the doc. Is it that there is nothing to learn from the doc's style? Can anybody think of one or two things that, even in that situation may be good about the doc, so that we're not just seeing the doc as though everything about the doc is bad. I mean, yes, if everything about the doc is bad, it's okay, but do you see anything that might be a positive that will count for the doc? All right, who is going to contribute in that regard?
I have my hand up, sir.
Okay, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, so after the recess, based on what you said, that docs, that the personality actually influences the leadership. So I decided to check, what does the doc stand for as in personality? And there's certain words that I found was quite contrary to my opinion of what a doc is. So doc are known to have clarity. They are very vigilant. They love, they have intuition. They are nurturing animals, and they are protective. They are feeling, they have self-expression. They have balance, adaptation, grace, and strength. And it's known generally that dogs are social animals. I now understood the fact that they follow each other, okay? So they're not solitary animals. They like being around each other. And they show emotion by what is known as imprinting, okay? And dog, they are as intellectual as almost like a parrot. So they're actually emotionally very intelligent. They scope their environment relatively very well. And the reason why they follow themselves is because they're very loyal. They're very loyal. So once they start following you, you understand, they follow you literally for a lifetime. In one of the studies that I saw, a sentence that says they are imprinting. There was a question about,
All right, sorry, it appears we're not hearing you, Bibi.
Whatever is there.
Okay, we didn't hear you. At some point there, your connection went off. You were saying there was something you saw about Imprint. You wanted, I think.
Okay, so there was a question about how did those show emotion? How did those show their feelings? Do they ever show them? Are they happy? Are they sad or anything? The main thing is that there's a language they are called imprinting. If you know the uniqueness of a dog is in its web and it has a waterproof leather, you understand? So the web, they are customized to be okay in a particular terrain, which is in water and bobs kind of a thing. So the imprinting helped them to establish their identity, form a bond. So they form bond quite easily. And they follow a leader. And once they start following the leader, they don't stop. So that speaks to loyalty. That speaks to the formation. The reason why they just all follow each other is a good thing. You know, they don't start thinking extra. And there's a language that Stanford University actually said, I don't know whether that's a good thing. Sometimes they call you, if you have a dog syndrome, they say it's like, so when a dog is even struggling, sometimes you do not even sit sometimes in his demure, or it just comes and stay on the water as if everything is okay, but the dog is actually struggling. So that's one another. I don't know whether it's a negative thing or a bad thing. They have what I would call a poker face, which means that the dog will do very well in the boardroom, you know. So, so those are the things I've seen in the positive kind of it. They're social birds. They like to be around people, around themselves, and they're very loyal animal.
All right. Okay, we will examine a couple of the stuff that you have said. Very useful information that is being brought to the table. So at least we can see some good things about them. You know, it's not. I mean, they are not bad creatures, you know, and looking at that video, I wanted to provoke that for a reason, that when you watch this video, what is predominant, you know, in the message is that, wait a minute, this is a disaster. How could this dog have allowed this kind of thing to happen? But I wanted for us to also think about it, because we've said a lot of what the dog didn't do right. But are there things that the dog has done right? Are there things we observe that could count? Mr. Idowu said, yeah, the dog is used to leading from the front. Okay, the dog has a default style. What Biola has shared points us to that direction as well. So is that default style, is it wrong, or does it help? If that's what the dog is used to doing, you know, I wanted us to speak to that. And it's for a reason. It's so that we are careful not to run with the conclusion that the dog's style of leadership is bad, so as not to condemn the dog's style of leadership, okay, or approach to leadership. There must be something that we see in what the dog has done, or how the dog does leadership, to also learn from it. Notice the masterclass said lessons from the dog. In some other communication, I think I had used avoiding the dangers of leading like the dog, which means that it implies that there are dangers of leading like the duck, but at the same time, they are positive. So when I study the duck, I want to take away the positives and be mindful of the dangers so that I can mitigate the dangers. The fullness of my lessons from observing the duck is having the totality of that, the strong and the weaknesses, and answers to the weaknesses. That way, my lessons is complete. One of the very instructive things about the duck is that their formation, the way they move, conveys that there is a leader-follower relationship. Is one of, I feel, is one of the very instructive arrangements that conveys how fundamental leadership is, all right, to anybody's growth. Because those ducklings grow by following the duck. All right. And the reason that there is that default style is because it's a style that has worked for them over the years. Over the years, if you still see the duck today leading a group of ducklings, the formation will be the same. The formation will be the same. But here we see the formation and we see the result, the outcome of the formation, that it can lead one of, if this doesn't tell us anything, it tells us that a wholesome embrace of the duck's style of leadership can lead to disaster. All right, so we must not wholesomely embrace what we see from the duck style of leadership. If we do so, then we must prepare ourselves for the day of trouble, when in the twinkle of an eye, everything can go wrong. Everything can go wrong. And each of us may be where we are today. We may even have passed this phase. Make no mistake, you don't lose your people by them physically disappearing. You can lose your people while they are still present. In our own case, they are still present, but they are not following. They're still present, but they're no longer with you. You're just on your own. You're just taking a walk, as some people would like to say. So when you look at the duck and what we are studying about how the duck lost all her ducklings, it will give you an insight into how you may have lost one or more of those who hitherto were following you. And you may lose your team members if you are not mindful of certain elements. If you're not mindful of certain elements. So that's the context within which we need to deal with these lessons from the duck, and is the focus, of course, of this masterclass. Now, I'm going to come back to the points that Bibi has made, but I want us to examine a few things about the style of, the duck. Some of the very instructive things that, people have established about how the duck operates. Some of them you have captured, and towards the end, you actually closed with one of the most instructive things. So who is the duck? And how does this duck lead? Without knowing the duck, you can't fully understand how it leads. Without fully understanding how it leads, you can't apportion blame, because you don't understand the circumstances. You don't understand the duck's modus operandi. And if you don't, it will look as if, I mean, how could any mother have allowed this to happen? But if you are the duck, it can happen. If you lead like the duck, it most certainly will happen at some point. Okay. So I'm going to do that by looking at a couple of quotes. Somebody said, always behave like a duck. You can imagine. I mean, if you are saying I should always behave like a duck, then that means there's something positive about the duck. But what it is it that this person is drawing attention to? He said, keep calm and unruffled on the surface, but paddle like the devil underneath. So what this person is saying is that the duck can be pretty calm. The duck can come across as being unruffled, unperturbed, but the duck is working hard, dealing with a challenge, all right, underneath. Now, this also speaks to the fact that the environment of the duck is important. The duck cannot paddle while it is on land. The duck only paddles when it is on water, where you see the body on top of the water, but the legs are not visible. The legs are the ones walking, and they are walking pretty hard to keep the duck sitting on the water, floating and moving if the duck needs to. So you need to understand, therefore, that the calmness of the duck will still play a role when the duck is on the terrain, on a different terrain, but the duck will not have the same control that she can exercise once she gets on ground. What happened will never happen if the duck were to be on water with all our ducklings. It will never happen. But the duck, as someone said, was operating within a different terrain. Failure to recognize that the terrain, the music has changed, can lead to disaster. So the duck did what she would normally do, was as calm until everything was lost, and then she became disoriented and confused. But even at that, the duck's personality is calm. The duck won't fret, or at least won't show it like you and I will show it. What is the consequence of that? In a situation where help, all right, would come by crying out, situations such as we saw, the duck will remain calm. Everybody will think everything is all right, but the duck is in a mess. Okay, so let's understand it. It's important that a leader is calm. It's important that a leader is not easily ruffled by situations, that a leader is able to control his or her emotions and not allow it to becloud their judgment in the particular situation. Otherwise, they will lose control. That's the problem with the duck. In a different terrain where the duck had little or no control. So your terrain is important. The circumstance in which you are dealing is crucial. Your ability to understand that this assignment that I'm undertaking with my team is a bit different from the ones that we have done together before is crucial. Otherwise, you will lose You can lose, you are exposed, you are vulnerable. The duck was vulnerable when she came to a different terrain. Leaders don't understand that at times they are vulnerable. Their flanks are open once the terrain has changed. The change of terrain may be, for example, like you take a man who has been used. I mean, somebody like Manny, he's been in the banking industry and he makes a move. And so he goes to another company. He's left banking. Maybe now he's gotten, a good offer and he moves to manufacturing. Okay. Now, the man has been 20 years in banking, 15 years in banking. He comes to manufacturing. He's thinking that Shebi is to manage people. No, it's not just to manage people. The environment has changed. You were very comfortable managing bankers. You were comfortable where you knew the processes. You know how to carry cash out, you know how to carry cash in, you know how to do credit and all of that. All of those things are different now that you are in manufacturing. Or maybe you come, we have a number of pharmacists, in class today. Or maybe you've just moved. And so money is being brought in as the CEO of a chain of, pharmacies. The landscape has changed. It's no longer the banking landscape. Yes, you still see people, just as ducklings were still following the mother duck. But failure to recognize that not only is it that they are on ground, but they are walking on snow. It's a different ballgame. It's a different ballgame. But she continued the same way to lead. And that's why we have the disaster in our hands. Are the things that Bibi said about the duck not true? They are true. But do they have limitations in terms of application? Certainly they do. Was she conscious about those attributes in her and not being fully formed in those who were following her? She wasn't. That's why you would expect the ducklings to walk across a grill whose feet are not as big yet as yours, and they kept falling in. Okay, Manny, please go ahead. I see your hand.
Yes, sir. All right, sir. I was actually just typing out a question.
No, go ahead.
I think I put out some part of it there.
All right.
So I was having a conversation with a gentleman. I won't mention the name, but I'm sure you know the person. You had asked me if I know.
Yeah.
Who lives in my city.
Yeah.
So I was having a conversation with him, and he recently made a switch from, I'm sure you're aware of that, from the private sector into the public sector.
Correct, yes.
And so I was I asked him, how were you able to manage that change? You've done this for over 30 years. All of a sudden, you're now having to lead an organization that is, filled with bureaucracy and a very different way of doing things.
Yes.
And he said something to me, which is the question I want to ask now. He said, leadership is leadership.
Yes.
Leadership is leadership.
Yes.
So wherever you find yourself as a leader, you just have to learn how to adapt to the situation that you find yourself.
Yes.
Incidentally, I've not in the course of my life up till now, I haven't had to transit, into an entirely different environment.
Yeah.
So I just want to know, because
Want to buy something?
All right, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, because I believe that change is inevitable.
Yeah.
Eventually, I would have to lead within a different context.
Yes.
So how does a leader build that adaptability, being able to adapt to new environments? Like the dog, like you said, was now in a terrain that they weren't familiar with.
Yes.
So how does a leader build that adaptability and develop it so it becomes part and parcel of what the core of that person? That's my question, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Now, leadership is the same. The leadership assignment does not change. I was thinking earlier today, and a definition came to my mind of leadership, of a leader. And I said that a leader is someone who facilitates the transformation of a follower such that the follower can fulfill destiny. A leader is one who takes responsibility for ensuring that the follower develops what he or she needs in order to fulfill their destiny. You understand? And it's a huge assignment. It's a huge responsibility. Now notice that definition is not result specific. That definition is not environment specific. That definition applies everywhere. Leadership is not about results, profit and loss, or market share. It's not about the targets. Leadership is about making people into who they should be, such that they can achieve those deposits, those profits, and all of that. So the first result of leadership, and the most important result of leadership, is who do your people become under you. It is not what are they able to help you to achieve primarily. That often leads to abuse, because you then see people as though they are a piece of paper, as though they are like your pool car, who you can ride as long as it gets you to your destination. What becomes of your pool car by the time you arrive at the destination is of no interest to you. No, that's not leadership. Okay, so what my friend said is leadership is leadership. As long as you are focusing on the people, because once you take your eyes off the people-centered focus of leadership, then that will not apply. However, leadership is done within a context. Okay, and so to that extent, you must know, if we use that illustration, that the music changes, the dance steps need to change, we still need the music. In order for us to enjoy whatever we derive from dancing to music. But then, what will they call you and I, who refuse to understand that the music has changed and we keep dancing in the same way? All right, we're ultimately going to become a nuisance. And if anybody was watching the way our dancing steps and wanted to copy us, we will make the person into twice as much a nuisance as we are. Are we together? So this is the point. But you raised an important point, which is if we acknowledge that when the context changes, the approach to leadership needs to change. How do we know what approach should be well suited for what situation? One is to understand that the context has changed. Two is to know, okay, so what is applicable right now? That brings me to a concept. And maybe now that you have asked, I'm going to try and gain time, later in our stuff. But let me speak to it now. I don't advocate. In fact, I'm in the process of writing that book now. It's going to be my 68th book by the grace of God. And the title is Leading from a Vantage Point. Leading from a Vantage Point. And it all came out of this masterclass. So I would dedicate it to the class, this class and the previous class. It isn't wrong to lead from the front. It isn't wrong to lead from the back. It isn't wrong to lead from the middle. It isn't even wrong to lead from the flanks or the sides. It isn't wrong to lead having a bird's eye view, or how do we call it? What is important is what is the point of advantage that the leader has that helps the leader to do the job of leadership. Notice, we have defined what leadership is about. It's about getting you to become who you need to be in order to fulfill your mandate, or in order to be useful to your world, if we may put it that way. All right? But the leader-follower relationship is a journey that is intended to produce a leader out of the follower. The job of the leader is to make that happen. Over the period of that journey, there will be different situations that the leader and follower will find themselves in. What the leader needs to do is, how do I lead as the situations change? So in some situations, you need to lead from the front. In some situations, you need to stay at the back. It depends on the situation. But the situation that you operate from must be the one that helps you to deliver on your job. Must be the one that helps you to deliver on your job. And I'm going to, by the way, I'm going to run a program on that, very soon, where I'll be sharing 12 perspectives from which to lead. It can't possibly be part of this program. Otherwise, we probably need a whole day. But I would show 12 clear vantage points from which to lead, so that you know that these are the tools. What you are looking for is the circumstance, the situation, that once you can identify this kind of situation, then you know what the vantage point is. All right? That is what you're asking me, sir. That is going to be very empowering. And it's part of what comes out from the duck. Why does the duck still choose to lead from the front when she's not in her usual terrain? Why would you lead from the front after you have tripped and you knew that route you tripped? If you know, as Bibi said, the duck is not unmindful of the fact that there are people following. That's how they bunch themselves up and follow. So you are going in front. You are on a new terrain. That grill almost cut your leg. But because you are more developed, you are able to rescue yourself out of that. But you didn't think that it was the point where you needed to stop and to turn around and prevent others from passing the same route. That was a point where you ought to have been prompted that, you know, we need to detour, to make a detour. If they had made a detour, learning from the experience of the dog, using our experience, being conscious now that, wait a minute, I mean, this terrain is different. There's a grill here, it's dangerous. Those two that fell in originally, or three, would not have fallen. They would have detoured. She would have prevented every other thing that happened as a consequence. So she obviously, on a new terrain, was not leading from a vantage point. A vantage point would be, where do you stay to prevent what the grill could do, or to ensure that you are able to track everybody at the same time when you know that you are on a different, you know, terrain. Okay, so yes, it is okay to, and let me say this here also, because I will come to it. If there was a problem with leading, the default style of leading from the front, ducks would have disappeared from the earth. They would have disappeared. You can't, because this would have happened enough times that we won't find ducks again. But so that should tell us that the style by itself is not wrong, but the context in which the style is deployed can lead to disaster. Why? The style has shortcomings, and every style has positive and negative. In some cases, you decide to stay at the back, disaster can still happen. All right? You stay at the back, for example, and you lead your people to a junction, and they need to cross the road, and you, as the leader, you are staying at the back. Is that not setting up for another disaster, leading from the back? You understand? So whatever situation you look at, there can be challenges. But you want to ensure that wherever you stand, you have your eyes on everybody and you are able to exercise control. One of the things that the doc ought to have done, which is part of the deficiencies in this approach, is that yes, they are loyal, but we can question their loyalty. They didn't have any structure. They don't have structure. Why do I say that? Everybody's following one leader, or so it would appear. Now, suppose you have, so who is next to the leader? Functionally, formally. The leader could have positioned somebody by the side, one of them could have positioned somebody at the back, so there is some form of structure as a way for her to know what's going on. Okay, as a way for her to know what's going on. So if you are in a team, that's at times why you need to structure your team to know who is responsible for what. You may not be able to see from every angle, but you can rely on members to be able to feed you back because you have put them in a place where they can see angles from, see things from where you are not seeing those things. So that's, let me stop there so that we can make, some progress. All right, so the same thing here that somebody else is saying. He said, be like a dog. So there is something that is positive about a dog paddling and working very hard inside the water. But what everyone sees is a smiling and calm face, but the dog is working hard. Again, inside the water. Inside the water. So this dog can be smiling. This dog can, you know, I mean, the demeanor of the dog, all right, in certain situations, the dog is able to control herself. Now, this one says, don't quack like a dog, soar like an eagle. Again, this talks about the issue of, you know, the terrain. What does an eagle do? One of the things I've learned about an eagle, and there used to be this post, you know, on social media, now and again you see it, where the eagle is said not to fight the snake on the ground. But what the eagle does is to descend on the snake from above, from the air, and pick up the snake into the air. The eagle is master in the air. The environment of the eagle is the air. You can't beat the eagle flying in the air. You can't beat the eagle flying in the air. So the eagle moves the snake into his own environment, and there the snake is helpless. A snake is completely, totally helpless in the air. If you leave the snake, ordinarily leaving the snake, the impact of the snake by the time the snake gets on the ground will kill the snake. Okay, but that's it. So here we're saying that the dog style is not one that is very sensitive to changes in the terrain. Is a major, you know, gaffe associated with the dog. Is a major gaffe associated with the dog. So, you know, we learn that from what Ken Blanchard has said. If you know anything about dogs, you know a baby dog will imprint itself on you. That's what Bibi was talking about earlier. It misses its mother. So the baby dog is very, you know, attached to its mother. That we know for sure. The mother has a lot of, you know, impact on the baby dog. That may also mean that the baby dog is too dependent on the mother and doesn't quickly grow up to take responsibility. Okay, so again, you see that yes, there is the affinity, and leaders need that, but you also need to develop them, independence in them at a very early age. If you compare them again with the eagle, and we learn how the eagle operates, we understand that the eagle, you know, is very quick to begin to develop, you know, the eaglets. And one of the ways is to take them up there and, you know, leave them. So they are forced, as it were, to quickly become independent as part of, you know, the program of growth that the eagle as the leader has for the eaglets. And the dogs lack that. There is too much closeness to the mother. Now, yes, we also talk about the fact that the dogs are closely knit, all right? They can be pretty confident. Look at the mother dog, even in the background that you see on the screen, striding forward confidently, okay? And so that's something that works for that. That confidence, however, got them into trouble because when you watch that video again, she was confidently even striding by the grill before it caught her leg. So at times, your confidence, don't cast it away, but be a bit more humble when you get into a different situation. Okay? That confidence may also have worked against the duck, because when she tripped or walked past that grill. Okay? So you can't be as confident on water as you are on land, as you are on the land that is filled with snow or covered in snow. Okay, so the confidence is good, is positive. It can encourage those who are coming behind. However, in certain circumstances, you need to a bit more. You need to hold back a bit. All right, so here I'm saying don't condemn the duck, because obviously the duck has been doing some things right. And in the picture that you can see here, the duck is not standing in front. The duck is standing, you know, almost on the same line. If I were to show the real picture, you see that it's standing like side, you know, there's like a line across. However, this is more of a static position though than, you know, a position that where the duck is taking, the ducklings. But to the extent that the duck exists today and is not extinct, it means that, you know, there's something to benefit from them. There's something to learn from them. The mistakes have not been enough. The shortcomings of that leadership style hasn't been enough to wipe them off. It's not been such a disaster. That leadership style is not a disaster. Leading from the front is not a disaster. Leading in the manner the duck leads is not a disaster, even though it can lead to a disaster. And it does lead to disaster every now and then. But, you know, if we understand that the disaster may be irredeemable, you don't want to work with that probability. You don't want to, you know, operate with people in the manner the duck can operate with her ducklings. You don't want to lose people in the manner that the duck, you know, can lose people following, you know, the approach that she uses. And that's why this is important. Okay, it was necessary to mention this. You would have access to this slide so you can go over, you know, those points. So I want to draw your attention to 7 things to take away on leadership from what we have seen. And these are profound truths, and you must never forget them. You must never, if you forget everything else, you must never forget them. The first, number 1, incidentally, this wasn't part of last week's session. So this was something that, you know, I added over the course of the week. So that's a bonus for everyone here today, perhaps for those who didn't make last week's session. The duck leadership style can lead to disaster despite its use over the years. All right. So the fact that it's being used, and it's still used till today doesn't mean that it can lead to disaster. You can lose everything you work for as a leader. That's what that is saying. If you do not constantly assess your leadership style for weaknesses and take steps to improve on them as a matter of urgency. You can't keep doing what the duck does without changing, because from time to time you would experience disaster. All right. So, and it applies to any approach to leadership, because your leadership journey cannot be managed from just one perspective. You can't succeed leading only from the front always. You can't succeed leading only from the back always. You can't succeed leading only from the side always. But I tell you though, there is one way to lead that you will always succeed. There is one way to lead that you will always succeed. And that is by leading from what I call the core. Leading from the core. Leading from the core means leading from your heart. Leading from your heart. Hopefully we'll talk about that. Number 2, leadership mistakes can be fatal and irreversible. It can be fatal and irreversible. God help that dog if that situation is completely outside what the dog can handle. She's helpless in that situation, possibly even hopeless, except somebody shows up, not a dog. 1,000 dogs will not rescue those ducklings. Somebody, a person, has to show up. And it has to be someone who can open the grill. And the person needs to have equipment and all of that. So leadership mistakes can be fatal. You can lose your followers such that you can't recover them again. If you like, continue working with them for the next 10 to 15 years. You can lose your followers such that you will not be able, whatever you do, to get them back on their feet to follow you again. Not that they will die, but they no longer have any reason to follow you. Leadership mistakes can happen suddenly and in rapid succession. We have seen that. I did emphasize that everything that took place with the dog happened in less than 1 minute. That video is 57 seconds. In fact, if you focus on where we began to see the dog move and up till the point that the dog lost the last duckling is about 30 seconds or a little more. So it shows you how things can go wrong. That video we saw is a leadership classic. And we saw how things went wrong in the twinkle of an eye. Please don't think that because we're humans, things can happen. Yes, they may not happen in 1 second, but they can happen. In our own relative context, they can happen very quickly as well. They can happen very quickly. That's why, it's one of the things that I hope to really be able to convey in this masterclass. And that's not something that anybody who is hoping to make meaning of their leadership, and that really means of their life, must not take for granted. It is a possibility, and when it happens, it can happen suddenly. And you don't want that kind of thing to happen. No, not if you understand that the lives of people have been committed into your hands. Leaders manage lives, not even people. Because what the people become in life is intended to be determined by your input. True followers are at the mercy of the leader. That's the truth. What becomes of people is at the mercy of the leader that they submit to. So leadership is that serious a responsibility. Leadership mistakes can make the leader look unprepared. It's easy to blame the duck. The duck looked so stupid, so incompetent. But as somebody said, the duck has been leading before now, before she got into that situation. But the duck only knew about her style and wasn't careful enough to prepare herself to operate, all right, on other terrains, in other circumstances. And so she looks like, who made this one a leader, for God's sake? The same thing can happen to you, it can happen to me. We need to prepare ourselves beyond what we are handling now, beyond our current challenges of today, beyond the kinds of people that we're handling today. Because our competence as leaders must not be dictated by today's situation. It must be dictated by preparedness to operate irrespective of what tomorrow brings. That's number 4. And I hope we're still together. Please let me know in the chat. I hope we're still together. Leadership mistakes can humiliate the leader and breed regrets. You are doing your best. Do you know that the duck was very sincere? Do you know that she never intended, nor would she have thought in her wildest of imaginations that a situation like that will leave her with none of her ducklings will present itself? She was humiliated, full of regrets. I can imagine. How come I came through this grill? Somebody said she took that route. Yes. So why did I decide to go this route? I could have gone through another. Look at that place, the whole place, there were so many options. If you looked at it very well, there were grills in a number of places actually, but there was more places, pure land without a grill that she could have taken. She could have navigated, but she didn't. So leadership can make you get into some situations. You are wondering, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done things differently. Leadership mistakes are not inevitable. You see the challenge of leadership. Leadership challenges are inevitable. And I wish I could speak to that, but we will spend a lot of time on it. Leadership challenges are inevitable. You want to transform people's lives? You must be ready for a lot, because people are not the easiest beings to deal with. People are far more difficult to deal with than ducks. One of the things said about the ducks, by the way, and I don't know if I skipped that in the quotes, is that they're a bit indisciplined. It's difficult, it's a Herculean task getting them to follow themselves in a straight line. So they tend to bunch up. And that speaks of indiscipline. Notice, if they had been on a straight line following their mother, then that disaster wouldn't have taken place. That disaster would have been spared. It wouldn't have taken place. It wouldn't have taken place. So the lack of discipline in the team, as seemingly loyal as we are told that they are disciplined. You can't tell one to be directly behind the next. If that were to be the case, they would have spared themselves that headache. They would have. Mistakes are not inevitable. What that means is that we can avoid mistakes, but that will require developing ourselves, our competence to lead. That's why you are here, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you are doing. You walk away from this session being very conscious of the things that you have seen and learned is going to affect the way you do your job, the way you interact with people, the way you provide leadership. So mistakes that your colleagues will make, you would not make them, though you face the same challenges as they face. That's number 6 takeaway. Number 7, only the leader's action or inaction can make her lose all the followers simultaneously. You can process that a bit. It's always about the leader. It's not about the follower. It's about what the leader does or fails to do. Whose fault is it in that video for anything that transpired? All that we have been talking about, isn't it about what the leader did? Isn't it about what the leader did not do? The speed of response, as someone mentioned, the route that the leader chose to follow. Was the leader communicating? Did the leader make sure that all the followers weren't subjected to the same experience as she had gone through before their eyes? You can't, as a leader, lose your followers. Some leaders point to others. They say that some members of the team are the ones influencing their members. That is just an excuse. And it's a sorry excuse for a good leader. It's a testimony that the leader is not doing his job. The leader ought to be the one that each person looks up to. So it is what you do or do not do that determines what happens. Now, let's go into the realm of, so, those are general takeaways, and like I said, I would give you access to the video. I'll give you access to the slides. Please just take care of them. It's for your eyes only. So that you can have the opportunity of going through this at your time. And I hope you would be able to make the time to be able to really process some things and imbibe some of these things, and see how they work or how they need to be put to use in your personal circumstances. One of the things that we pride ourselves in at EMET is that we like to focus on, a participant developing an action plan. So I'm hoping that as you are listening, you are asking yourselves pertinent questions about your own circumstances and experiences, and you are taking note of the areas that you need to work on, some of the gaps that your approach may be opening you up to, and you need to close them. All right, some of the things you need to start doing as early as, Monday when you get back to work. These are hopefully the things that you should be getting. And these are not limited to work environments alone. Even they are limited to everywhere where you have a responsibility to lead. Okay, so let's look at the leadership lessons very quickly. All right, so some myths about leadership that we need to debunk quickly. Was that doc truly leading? What really is the credible evidence that you are leading? And ask yourself these questions. Are you truly leading? If every person falls in the ditch, are you leading? If you have lost your people, are you leading? Could the duck really have been said to be leading? Somebody said she's only ahead of the team. She wasn't leading. If she was truly leading, people would not have fallen into the ditch. At least not in the numbers in which, by which they fell. Okay? That's one simple test to know whether you are leading or not. Let's look at what your people are doing. Are your people truly following? Because at times, leaders keep themselves thinking that the people are following, whereas the people are just coming behind them. The point that Bernadette made was that the leader is just going ahead of them. But it's also the case in some instances that, the followers are just coming behind their leader. They're just coming behind. They're not really following. If people are truly following you, should they have fallen into the ditch? Think about it. If they were really following, did they not see that you tripped and your leg was almost caught in the grill? How come they still pass the same point? Are they truly following? What is following really? Are they seeing anything? Are they observing closely? And that may be part of the challenge of the way they are structured, that they are bunched up. Some not see the steppings when you look at it very well. They can't see the steppings. They can't see the strides of the duck, of the mother duck. What they see are the backs of their fellows, those who are ahead of them. So in reality, they have no opportunity of observing how the mother duck navigated past that obstacle. They only could rely on the steppings of colleagues like themselves. No wonder some of them fell in. No wonder the same thing happened when they came back. So are your people following? Are they following? Don't kid yourself that because you have members of the team, they're in your department, they're in your pharmacy, therefore they are all with you. They may not be with you. It doesn't mean they are not working. It doesn't mean that they won't obey instructions. But leadership goes beyond obedience to instructions just because you said so. Because leadership is about personality building. It's about character development. It's about transforming the spirit of the person. It's not a mechanical thing. So you and I can be working and you can be giving me instructions, I'm carrying them out. But I may not change because I'm not learning anything from you. Why? I haven't opened myself up to learn from you. Forget what I do. It is mechanical. I'm fulfilling all righteousness. That's not following in the real sense of it. Now, leaders think they can't lose all their people. We have seen clearly that that's not true. Can you also gain control of all situations? Some would ask. It is possible. But if you are going to lose control, like the duck lost control, it should be an exception. And that exception can prove to be very costly, as we have seen. But it should be an exception. Again, that's the challenge of leadership. The leader is not expected to know everything, but the leader is expected to be able to rise up in every situation to prevent a disaster. There's a big difference. And that's why a leader takes responsibility and will always be held accountable. Because leadership is beyond knowledge. It is beyond wisdom. And we have seen that the problem was with control. The duck was not in control, did not have, a view of everything that was happening part-time with those who are meant to be following her. And that a leader ought to take responsibility for. A leader must not put himself or herself in a situation where she can't exercise control. And you can say to me, but how can you possibly be in control in all situations? Yes, that's why the leader needs to develop and develop and develop and continue developing their capacity to lead. You never get there as a leader because situations after situations you would encounter. You never arrive as a leader. You keep pressing, all right? But, the more you learn, the more able you are to exercise control. And I'll give you a sense that it is possible, if I may, use a scriptural example. Manny, I see your hand, I'll recognize you shortly. Let me quickly use this example. You have from the very early days in the Bible, I think it's Genesis 1:28. It said, and God blessed them. And it said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion. Now, those are 5 levels of leadership. And you grow from one level to the other. And you grow from one level to the other by doing the same thing that you did to get to the first level. But you observe that the level of dominion means that I'm in charge here. Dominion means I'm in charge. I have control. There is nothing that arises that I won't be able to handle. The stage or level of dominion is a level where nothing can surprise the leader. But you don't get there, just like that. You have to keep working, keep learning, all right, in order to get to that point. Yes, Manny.
All right. Thank you so much. Powerful lessons. My question is going to sound a bit controversial.
It's allowed.
Now, is it possible that the problem could be the followers? In other words, can a leader have the wrong followers?
Do you look at the slide I have in front? What does it say?
Is based on this slide that I'm asking this question. Yes. So I'm more or less, I'm just trying to probe this a bit further.
Let me tell you how it is, the reality of it.
Yeah.
The reality of it is this, is that the leader will be held responsible for the inability to make followers follow. Because what the follower does to the one who judges is not an issue when it comes to appraising the leader. However, the follower also will be held responsible for his inability to take advantage of his or her leader. Can you see? Each one has a responsibility. The mandate of the leader is to make the follower follow him to a destination, which is to be able to transform, to impact the follower's personality in a way that the follower will be useful, all right, to his environment and to the world. But the follower will not, the fact that your leader is bad is no excuse for how a follower turns out. All right? Because the follower is required to work out his or her own salvation as well. Okay, so I followed a bad leader. Okay, how do you know the leader is bad? And I say to people that one of the problems that we have is that we are mindful of the fact that we don't want to lose our job. We know our leader, we are not gaining anything, but we remain there. We remain under the person. We forget that the effect of the leader will be seen in our lives. The more you stay under bad leadership, the more you cap your ability to become anything. But you don't want to bring yourself out of that umbrella. You are hoping that one day, something will happen. Now, you either do something to change, and you can't change a bad leader, by the way. No follower can change a bad leader. Forget. It's not in the hand of a follower to influence the leader. It is the other way around. Do you get? A fruit cannot determine what will happen to the tree. No fruit make the tree good. Only the tree can make the fruit something. And a good tree will never produce a bad fruit, and vice versa. Do you understand, sir? So I like that, and that assessment is great, which is part of the problem I also have with the way that we do appraisals, in companies. And somebody is asking my subordinate to say something about me. What does my subordinate know about what I'm trying to do, about what it entails? It's not done. I mean, if I go by my biblical way of doing things, you and I will not be the basis for assessing Christ or any of the apostles. You understand? Because their mandate will be viewed from a particular point of view. We are meant to benefit from that. You understand? We are like a pot in their hands that they are molding. And he says, how can the pot now be passing a judgment on the one who is molding it? Does it make any sense? It does not. But so that's why leaders can't just say is the follower. I did a piece recently in a program, and it was the art of persuasion, the art and power of persuasion. And I was looking at it from the point of view of leadership. And my argument was this, is that the job of the leader is to persuade followers to follow. You can't take it for granted. All right? So you must learn that art, because until they truly follow, you can't affect their lives. No leader can force himself on any follower. If a follower does not open their lives up to you, you cannot influence it. But to get them to open their lives up to you and to embrace your teaching and to do with their person, with their spirits, what you are expecting, you have work to do to persuade them. If they are not persuaded, then as far as that person is concerned, your job is not done. And that means, and it's not that you are ineffective because you couldn't persuade everybody. You can have a team of 12. There may be one or two that you just, whatever you do, it won't work. All right? If it were possible to achieve 100%, you and I won't be talking about Judas today. But if Judas didn't exist, then you and I won't be leaders. Okay? But the 12 weren't Judas. If your 12 are Judas, then you haven't done a good job. If the majority are Judas, then we should ask you questions. So it's not to suggest that you can control everybody and you can make everybody follow you. Yes, in some cases, I mean, you can do that. But it's to say that the way, what we hold you responsible for typically, you know, is we expect that people will follow you. That's your job. Your job is to make them follow you so that they can become, you know, something, okay, in life. And also at the same time, they don't have excuse. They are not to point to you and say they are what they have become because they don't have a good leader. And the very fact that they can identify that they didn't have a good leader means that they had a presence of mind. They knew that they were heading in the wrong direction. Why did they not make a change? There is nobody's current job that is as important as their future. So much so that should make them continue to fall, put themselves under bad leadership. It is an indication that the person doesn't understand the vital place of leadership in the quest to fulfill destiny or to amount to anything. All right, nobody is self-made. I always say that. There's nothing like being self-made. The world system was not designed like that. It was designed in a way that each of us is meant to benefit from those who have gone ahead of us. Okay? And it's our job to find the right people to bring ourselves under. I don't know whether that answers your question. Bibi, I see your hand.
I just wanted to quickly answer his question with a case scenario. So I'm a pharmacist. Okay, so because you said there are some pharmacists in the house.
Yes, certainly.
Within a split second, the leader is always responsible for anything. I was practicing one day, very early in the morning, this pharmacy in UK. They usually open very early, 6 a.m. But between 6 a.m. and 9, the traffic in the pharmacy is usually quite very small. And then we have what is known as our standard operating procedure. For every little thing that you do, there's a process. It doesn't matter whether there's a lot of people there or there's no lot of people. So this German lady brought a prescription for me. The prescription is for chloramphenicol eye ointment, what we call Apollo. Okay. The chloramphenicol eye drops is usually kept, is a little mil, 5 mil, is usually kept in the fridge, okay? And there's another chloramphenicol ear drops. It is a more viscous thing. It is 5%, you know, oily drop. The aqueous one is 0.1% aqueous water for the eyeballs. And at that point in time, I am never supposed to dispense any prescription without a counter staff assistant, first of all, and a dispenser picking up the product. And they should dispense it and I should check it. So there's supposed to be 3 levels of check. First of all, the prescription, it goes to the dispenser who picks up the item from wherever it is, puts it in the basket, bring it and run it, and I get. But it was very early in the morning and there was nobody around. I was freshly entering the pharmacy. So my assistants were not around. So I took the prescription by myself, collected the money by myself, brought it into the pharmacy by myself, opened the fridge and picked up by myself, did all that process all by myself. It's a very dangerous thing. All this, what I'm talking about, did not take more than 5 minutes because I was familiar with the environment. And when I finished dispensing, the patient went. 1 hour after that, don't forget the lady is a German lady. German. Germany very, very hard and troublesome people. In UK, I don't know whether it's because of the law. Anyway, and the store manager came towards me. By the way, that is not my own pharmacy. I was locally. What that meant, I was doing a part-time. So another pharmacist manager entrusted the system into my hand. And it's my responsibility to follow everything to the letter. Okay? So anyway, they came, the store manager, everybody was coming to the pharmacy, 7 a.m. by now, I think it was 7, because we open at 6. One after that, about like 8 a.m. So now the store is already very busy. And they came to me, and immediately there was a review. Apparently, I've picked the wrong one. I picked the ear drops instead of the eye drops. And the patient said that she has dropped one into her eyes. And the mother came, it was a lot of things. It was the whole, in fact, I could not walk anymore. Immediately right there and then, they took me into the consultation room. There's also a process for a dispensing error. And this dispensing error was so big, I had to get in touch with the consultant who prescribed the thing. There were so many things. And in one split second, my credibility as a pharmacist went down the drain. And I was responsible. Because one of the questions I was asking is, who sent my counter staff assistant out? Because their store manager actually asked them to come and start doing something because they were not busy, you understand? But I had a choice. What am I saying? The choice depends on me. I am ultimately responsible because I was the leader of the team at that point in time. God, we have, and that kind of error has happened in that environment before with Lloyd's, and they charged Lloyd £5 million. That was the enormity of that particular error, and gave that pharmacy a wrong name because people did not trust them anymore. What am I saying? Everything boils down to leadership. I was the leader there. And one of the things I could not do, in one split second, a decision where I thought I was helping went all very bad. So everything lies on leadership. Everything lies on leadership. So those are the pharmacists.
All right.
SOP is very important.
I'm sure all the pharmacists in the house can relate with you on that subject. All right. So, you know, and the reason that I really said that was that, you know, many leaders tend to, we have this attitude, it's their fault, you know. We don't want to take responsibility. We think that, you know, that we can't force ourselves on followers, but we forget that we also have a job to do. And if people don't follow us, what is there to lead about ourselves? We simply lose our relevance, you know, and we should very well vacate the seat if we can't make that happen. All right, so leadership is also a journey. And that's one of the things that we need to learn from what we find. It may look like you, I said they may look like you. I was referring to the dogs. The dogs look like the mother dog, all right? But you know, the ducklings haven't grown to her level, you know, and she had assumed, I mean, by running across that grill, by not turning back, is it that you are expecting that they ought to know, that they ought to see, you know, what is happening to you? But, you know, what is the point? If you understood that those who are following you are not at your level, you know, then that you need to factor in. You need to factor that in as well. And therefore, there are some things you can't expect them to know on their own. Okay, there are things you can't expect them to do on their own. Otherwise, they would get into trouble. Over time, as you know, superintend what they do, you'll be able to show to show them, manage the risk associated with their, you know, with following you, you know, and ensure also that they turn out well. I'm going to can I crave the indulgence of the class for us to bring the session to a close? I know you must have programmed yourself to bring, there's still a bit of ground that we need to cover. Can we close the session latest at 7:30? That's in another 20 minutes. Is that fine with us? Or we'll try and close it much earlier than then. We're already a bit over time. So please let me know in the chat so that I can get a sense of how quickly we need to bring all this to a close. All right, okay, great. All right, can I have more suggestions, please? All right, more suggestions. I have only 2 who have responded. Let me see what others are saying so that we do what is in the best interest of, yeah. Okay, all right, all right. Okay, all right. All right, I would really like everyone in the class to put in a word. I've seen what appears to be the, please put in your word if you have not. All right, losing the privilege to lead. Leadership is a privilege, and every leader needs to recognize that. The mother dog, yes, she's a mother, but it's a privilege. Is a position of privilege. When you are the leader, it's a position of privilege. A leadership position is not, is a position of privilege, at least primarily, okay? Primarily, I mean, to be put in charge of development of people, transformation of the lives of people who are just like you, it's a privilege, okay? And it's unacceptable that you would lose that privilege like the dog did. Is unacceptable. So please don't lead in a way that you lose the privilege. You lose the privilege when nobody is following you. When nobody is following you, the privilege is lost. When nobody is following you, the privilege is lost. But there is the right to lose, to lead, and you can lose that as well. The right to lead is different from the privilege. You have the privilege. If today I appoint you as the head of one department, is a privilege. It's a privilege. But the right, you earn the right. So the right only comes when the people who are following trust you, and therefore they commit themselves to truly follow you. If those people, if you lose them, like the dog lost them, you've lost the right to lead. You've lost the right. What do you have to offer? If you rubbish the people's destiny because they are following you. You have no say. You have no reason to have any other person follow you. So it's dangerous. It's dangerous. And if you know leadership well, you know that it takes a lot to build the right, to earn the right to lead, because you have to build credibility. And credibility or trust is not built overnight. Okay? It's not built overnight. When you lose, that is a disaster. I think I've said a lot about leading from the front, and I'm saying lead from everywhere. And all that, the point here is this: don't just lead from the front. Don't just adopt the fact that you're a leader. When we talk about leader, it suggests that people need to, the leader needs to be in front. We need to be seeing the leader every time. But that's not the reality of the leader-follower relationship. It means that the leader needs to be present at all times. It means that the leader needs to operate from whatever angle gives the leader control over what's going on, makes the leader observe all who are following, and helps the leader to be able to deliver his mandate, okay, as far as those who are following are concerned. So lead from the point of advantage. And one clear point of advantage is leading from your heart. If you truly lead from the heart, or lead from the core, that's what I call leading from the core, the heart. When a leader's approach is motivated by love or compassion, it's a different ballgame. That always motivates the leader to be on the lookout in every situation for the best way to impact the lives of those who are following. Okay, there's going to be more of that if you get the, I think I would notify you when the book is out, possibly sometime later this month or early next month, leading from a vantage point. You lead also from experience. We've seen what took place there. As simple as it was, the fact that the duck tripped was an experience on the journey. And she didn't appear to have taken note that that was a very instructive experience and that would have benefited those who were following. So we must learn to lead from our experience. It's not every time that experiences will come in useful, all right? But we must be on the lookout. When does the experience come in useful? And how do you look for those who have, who are lost? Now, everyone is important and all must be treated in the same in a team. When a member is lost, please note, when you lose a member, it is the job of the leader to go in search of that member, to go after that member and to recover that member. It is negligence and an unpardonable act of irresponsibility to forgo or forget the lost team member. What we saw with the duck is everybody rushing after the mother duck as if they are all responsible, for rescuing those who are lost. No, it's not the job. It is the job of the people. Okay. Okay, I've noted your email. I've noted. Okay, so it's the job of your people. Okay, I mean, is your job as a leader to go after? I mean, one of the things we find, from the Bible is that if one sheep is lost out of 100, you leave the 99. But it didn't say you allow the 99 to be following you. You leave the 99 securely, secure them. Secure them. A bird in hand is what do in the bush. You secure them. It was reckless for you to turn back suddenly and approach the grill when you know that everybody follows you. That's your style. Everybody follows you everywhere. And everybody rushed out of indiscipline, rushed onto the grill. And there was no restraining that on the part of the one who was leading, when they ought to have been kept somewhere. That's the issue about discipline also, that the duck is unable to tell the duckling, stay here. The same way that she cannot tell them to line up on a straight line as they are embarking on their journey. So when you don't have that discipline, things can go wrong. Secondly, and more importantly, the point we're making here is not their job to go and look for the other member that is lost. It is the leader's job. The leadership responsibility is a one-to-one relationship. It's the leader and every member of the team. It's not the relationship between the leader and the whole team. No, you must treat each person differently and build that relationship, with each person. The leader's responsibility is to keep others safe. Is to keep them safe. is to keep them safe. The duck was sincere, but sincerity is not enough. With true leadership, competence is more valued, is better valued than being sincere. You need to build competence. It's not about being sincere. The duck, we can't be more sincere than the mother duck. She gave birth to them. She's not interested in losing any of them, but she did. And she lost all of them, by the way. Then there is the bandwagon effect. I know we've tried to say a couple of things about that last person, that last guy that jumped in. It's very clear to me that the last person jumped in. And because you are standing on the grill, if you look at the way the grill were partitioned, I mean, we couldn't have that closely. You would have to jump forward anyway in order to fall through the holes in the grill. And I don't think that, first of all, that forward jump was that compelling. In addition to the fact that how much could the duckling have jumped anyway? These are not they are not jumping animals, as it were, like that. The mother duck can leap and use her wings, and cover grounds. Not those ducklings. That couldn't have been the way out. The way out would have been to walk carefully on the parts of the grill. Okay, after all, she was even standing on one of, the grills. All right, she wasn't standing at the edge, she was standing on one. And the thing was to carefully supervise how she gets out of that place. If the duck was as responsive as she should be. But we have seen that calm demeanor of the duck still worked against her, in my view, in that position, because that was an emergency. That was a position where, hey, she was going to lose everything. How calm can you be? All right, in the face of that, what mechanism do you have in place to ensure that that last person didn't follow? There was a more compelling motivation for that last person to jump, to follow the others, than there was to follow the mother. Every other person that we started out the journey together, all my colleagues, I'm hearing their voices inside the grill. And you're suggesting that I shouldn't. The mother would have to do a great more than she did, all right, to get me to truly jump so that I can be with her. And that, in my view, is a big test of leadership. All right, is a big test of leadership. You understand? There's the bandwagon effect. It's part of the reason that they bunch, And so there is a time for that to work. There is a time that will bring trouble. All right. So never ignore the peer influence when you're leading a team. That's the point there. Please don't, because it can be costly. It can be costly. And that means that you need to work on, ensuring that you truly have a strong relationship with each person, so that you can have the influence that is required to bail them out in the face of trouble. Okay? All right, I see a question here. Please, what is your advice for a follower who has a leader who thinks he or she knows it all, does not take advice, and at the end of the game is the followers that will pay for it? Follower losing her job and the leader still remains in the company. Wow, you have asked a very tough question, which, all right, let me put it this way. I'm going to put this at the doorstep of a different subject entirely, and you will crave my indulgence for that. I'll put my email and you can reach out to me. But there is, if you're interested, there is a program that I have on how to charm your boss. Okay. There's another one that talks about how you get into your boss's inner circle. And I think that one of the things that, and so to the extent your question is right, is that when you do have a leader, there is what followers need to do. Incidentally, our focus is more on the leader in this course or in this masterclass. But one of the things that the followers don't realize is that there is more to their working relationship with their leader than just doing what he or she asks them to do. Your leader is also a person. Your leader has some sentiments. Okay, you must know how to play, okay, to the sentiments of your leader. You must know how, what makes, you must learn how to develop that kind of relationship with your leader. All right, how to study your leader, what are certain things you must be mindful of about your leader, and how to get along with your leader and indeed make yourself a favorite of the leader. Those are the things that would answer this question. I must be fair with you. It's not to just say that. There are a couple of things that you need to learn to do, okay, so that you can even be in a position where your leader will listen to you and will place a premium on what you say. Okay, is a challenge. You would expect that if you give your leader some suggestions, things that you feel that your leader should hear. But what if you have a leader who does not hear? What if you have a leader, like you said, who thinks he or she knows it all? There's a way to relate with that. There's a way to deal with that. Okay, there's a way, for example, when you deal with people like that, you need to make them appreciated. All right, you need to make them seem as if truly, yes, they know it all, so that you can remove that, there's a way that they react towards those who think that, they know something as well, yet they are subordinates. You want to break that. And the way you break that is to make your leader feel at ease with you. And you do that initially by accepting, by flowing, and by chipping in some things once in a while. Praise your leader. At times when you suggest, don't put, you must know even how to present your own point of view, not as an instruction. Some subordinates will, by the way they speak, they say they are making their contribution, but when you look at the way they are speaking, they are instructing their boss on what to do. No boss will take that. The average boss won't take that from anybody. All right. So there's a lot to do, but it's not beyond what you can prevent. You can always manage your boss. All right. So please remind me at the end. I will put my email there, and we can talk about this subsequently. It's a major program. It's a program that it will take you about 2 hours or thereabout, so that you can learn what you need to do. And you must know what you need to do, because there are leaders like that. I hope that helps. All right, being an example, now I have to close. Some leaders believe that they need to do, the concept of do as I do. And that's one of the things that the doc was trying to do. But do as I do, like, Bernadette said, we couldn't really see what we can call communication between the mother doc and the others. It seemed vital communication was missing. She probably expected, since you are following me and you saw that I wanted to trip, I expect you to try and avoid that place. All right. But, what was there to communicate anything? Nothing. If you don't communicate, that's the limitation of example. Some of us who say, we are good examples and all that, what you are showing that you're expecting the others to copy, they don't know why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Have you bothered to explain it? Do you take the opportunity to explain things to them? Do you? Because examples are limited if they are limited to just observation. Yes, we see what you're doing. We always know that you wake up in the morning when you come to the office and you pray before we start. We don't know why you do it. So we won't know the day is appropriate. We won't know the day is not appropriate. Okay? But if you speak to it, then you give us an understanding. And that's where a lot of us, also miss it. So don't just tell people to do what you do. Also focus on ensuring that they learn why you do what you do. All right, so here I'm just saying that leadership is risky. Good leadership would expose people to risk. If people are following you and they must get to the destination, you are taking them, you are going to go through risk. There will be situations that present risk. What the leader must take responsibility for is that it is unacceptable for you to allow the risk to crystallize such that you have nobody following you anymore. You lose everybody. Okay? Such that you lose everybody. All right. You need to forge team cohesion, and you should lead your team. Lead a team, don't lead followers. Lead a team, don't lead just followers. You should have a clear guidelines on how your team should operate. There should be a structure. There should be do's and don'ts. There should be how to handle situations of crisis and all of that. That's what makes for cohesion. It's not the fact that everybody is following everybody, and you shouldn't do everything. Leaders don't do everything. That's why structure is important. They do things through people in the process, showing how people ought to do things and putting structure in place that empowers them to control, the people and to control what is happening. You should also lead as a team player, not with an air of arrogance, not just going in step, but also hanging on, subjecting yourself to the rules, of team play. All right, and spending more time within the group than just staying in front and taking interest, on what happens to the others. We have seen enough of this, that leadership failure is real. You are not supposed to lose anybody, let alone lose all the people. Okay, don't lose anybody, let alone lose all the people. And for a leader to be alone is a disaster, is a complete disaster. Don't let that happen, please. Leading is progressive. I think we have made that point. All right, I think I should stop here. Like I said, you would see the slides, and so you can just complete that portion of what it takes to have followers commit themselves to you. And I have descriptions on each point that I have made there. So with that, I want to say thank you very much for attending the session. I hope it has been worth your while. And I'll just leave the floor open for any last set of questions or remarks. And that's it. All right, so your questions and your remarks or comments. All right, so you have the floor, please.
Again, this is Bibi. Sorry,
yeah.
I didn't raise up my hand. It's been quite a journey. If I've learned anything that's so profound today, is the fact that leadership is a journey, like I said, is not a sprint. And I think Mr. Mani brought a very interesting thing onto the table, the agility of a leader, of leadership, or adaptability of leadership, which is one thing that the docs really do have. So I've been well impacted, and then I have a lot of go back home to go and review, to be the kind of leader that people want to follow with wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. All right, any other questions or remarks? You have the floor. If you want to speak, just go ahead and speak. Any questions? Last minute set of questions, perhaps.
I just want to ask a question, sir. As you send your email, can we get in touch with you after this to just share with you some things that would support us in our workplace, just in case we have any case scenario or circumstance that we want just a word, apart from attending the necessary classes that will support us? Do we have access to you?
Yes, you certainly do. I'm just putting my details in the, I'm putting my details on the chat right now. I'm putting 2 emails through which you can reach me. My phone, I would also put there. And please feel free to reach out if you do have any reason, or anything you want to clear. You can reach out to me on WhatsApp. That phone works as well on WhatsApp. Am I missing out anything? I think.
Yes, somebody wanted to know, sir, what are your handles that we can follow?
Oh, all right. I think you can on EMET Leadership Academy. You would find that on Facebook and on LinkedIn. EMET, I'm typing that out, EMET Leadership Academy, Facebook and LinkedIn. Yes. All right, on Olatunji Shobodu.
Yes.
Olatunji Shobodu on, well, just search for Olatunji Shobodu on Facebook.
YouTube, sir.
On Facebook. Oh, yeah. YouTube as well. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. All right. If you can search also for my weekly newsletter, is titled Leadership Insights. It's a weekly newsletter on issues of leadership. If you search for that, I typically issue it on LinkedIn, but I tend to post it as well on some of the other, social media accounts. If you're interested in books, then you can use the link that is being posted below and check out the books on, all right, there's that link for the books. You can check that out. There is also the website, although there's a new one that is under development right now, but you can see other courses and other materials on the website as well. That's coming. All right, and any additional information I think you would get when we send you the link. Expect an email from us by Monday, I think, where we'll send you the link for this session so that you can watch the video. There will be other information there on how you can reach me or you can reach EMET Leadership Academy. I hope that will be helpful, but please feel free to reach out with any situation, any area where you might need help, and for any suggestions as well. We're open to help and to have the feedback. And we'd also send you each a certificate to authenticate your participation at the class. The certificate would look like what you have on the screen, but it would be an e-version though, not a hard copy. But that will serve its purpose as well. So, in the absence of any other I'd like to thank you all so much. Thank you for attending. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you for the privilege to share this little ideas with you, and we hope that you will put it into use immediately, and we look forward to hearing your feedback from doing precisely that. Thank you, and God bless you. And please, share with others, speak to others about EMET Leadership Academy. If the experience has been, great, we would appreciate if you introduce us and our programs to others. You know what they say about word of mouth.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you.